Check your bank app right now. Look at your checking, your savings, your 401k, and mentally subtract 30%. Because while you were arguing over the latest political circus on Twitter, the actual deed to the United States economy was just called in by a desert kingdom 7,000 miles away. You've been fed a very specific lie over the last few days. You've been told the UAE leaving OPEC is an energy story. It is not. It is a hostage situation, and your retirement account is the collateral. They didn't threaten to cut off the oil supply. They threatened to dump $2 trillion in U.S. assets by Monday morning. And what did Washington do? They didn't deploy aircraft carriers. They didn't impose sanctions. They quietly authorized emergency swap lines, firing up the printers to hand billions of your dollars over as ransom to Emirati royals. Why? Because the United States is no longer a superpower built on manufacturing or innovation. We are a highly leveraged casino operating on a fragile $13 trillion daily system called the offshore shadow banking repo market. If the UAE dumped those treasuries, the collateral backing every major bank, hedge fund, and money market in America evaporates in 24 hours. So, the Treasury Secretary surrendered. They chose to bail out foreign powers to prevent a Wall Street crash right before an election cycle. The cost of that surrender is going to be extracted directly from your life. Your adjustable rate mortgage is about to violently hit 11%. Your gas is going to $8 a gallon. Not because of supply chains, not because of a war, but because the dollar in your pocket just became monopoly money. We are going to break down the exact mechanism of this financial nuke, and I need you to decide right now. Should the government have called their bluff and let Wall Street burn to save the purchasing power of the dollar? Or is bailing out a foreign kingdom the only way America survived? Let me explain the exact trap we walked into. Most people think U.S. Treasury bonds are just debt, a piece of paper that says the government owes someone money. They aren't. In the modern global financial system, treasuries are the absolute foundation. They are the base layer of reality. They are used as collateral in the repurchase agreement, or repo market, where over $13 trillion change hands every single day just to keep the lights on in the financial sector. Shadow banks, hedge funds, and megacorporations use your government's debt to secure overnight loans. But here's the dirty secret. Wall Street prays you never learn. They don't just use a bond once. Through a process called Rehypothecation, they take one U.S. Treasury bond and pledge it multiple times to borrow more and more cash. It is called the collateral multiplier. They have built a skyscraper of leverage balanced on a single grain of sand. So, when a foreign power threatens to dump their treasury holdings on the open market, it is not a $2 trillion problem. It is a $10 trillion margin call on the entire American economy. If those bonds flood the market, their price plummets. When the price of the bond plummets, the value of the collateral inside the shadow banking system evaporates instantly. Lenders demand more collateral. Hedge funds are forced to liquidate, and the global banking system freezes overnight. ATMs stop working, payrolls bounce. I actually had to read the Federal Reserve's emergency FEMA repo facility reports 3 times. I sat there at my desk looking at the screen, genuinely not wanting to believe that the mathematical sovereignty of a $39 trillion national debt hinges on a digital ledger in Abu Dhabi. But it does. Through the Foreign and International Monetary Authority's repo facility, the Fed essentially offered to take those foreign-held bonds and hand over freshly printed U.S. dollars in secret. They bought the leverage. They absorbed the toxic waste. Here is where I need you to step back and look at what just happened. I need you to look at the sheer scale of the betrayal. Did the politicians commit treason? Because what they just executed is a direct wealth transfer from working-class Americans to foreign billionaires. By printing that money to absorb the threat, they diluted the purchasing power of every single dollar you own. They didn't tax you on your paycheck where you could see it. They taxed you through the silent theft of inflation. What does this bailout mean for John in Ohio? It means the number inside his 401k stays the same, preserving the illusion of wealth, but the money inside it buys 30% less at the grocery store. It means his adjustable rate mortgage doesn't just tick up, it skyrockets. Because long-term bond yields are pricing in a desperate, captive government. John isn't paying for a house anymore. He is paying the geopolitical penalty of a failed empire. Stop for a second. Think about your own expenses over the last 12 months. You thought inflation was just a post-pandemic hangover? A temporary glitch in the supply chain? What happens when the global reserve currency is officially weaponized as a bargaining chip against its own citizens? You might look at this and think Washington is just weak. You might think the Treasury is incompetent. They aren't. They are coldly, ruthlessly rational. You have to understand the logic of the people running the system. A sudden 1929-style stock market crash destroys political careers instantly, especially during an election cycle. The donors get wiped out. The portfolios crash. But a slow, grinding 15% inflation rate, they can survive that. They can go on TV and look dead into the camera, blaming the rising costs on corporate greed or overseas supply chain disruption. They consciously chose the slow, agonizing death of the middle class over the sudden death of their own power. Am I being too cynical here? Part of me really wants to believe that the Treasury genuinely thought they were protecting everyday Americans from a catastrophic banking failure. But then you look at who actually holds the bags in the repo market. Private equity firms, mega banks, unregulated shadow entities heavily exposed to bad commercial real estate bets. And you realize the cruelty isn't an accident. It's the entire business model. They didn't protect you, they protected the casino. And here is the reality that should keep you awake tonight. By paying this ransom, we didn't solve the crisis. We just printed the menu for the rest of the world. Look at the data. China is currently sitting on over $700 billion in U.S. Treasuries. Brazil, India, and the rest of the BRICS nations are holding hundreds of billions more. We just showed them the exact mathematical formula to break the American economy without firing a single bullet. We proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that if you hold enough of our debt, Washington will tax its own citizens into poverty just to keep the stock market from having a bad week. We didn't prevent the collapse of the dollar. We just subsidized the people who are going to pull the trigger next. So I want to know where you stand when the next margin call comes in, and it will. What is the play? Should the government finally call the bluff, let Wall Street burn to the ground, and save the dollar? Or is paying the ransom with your future the only way this country stays afloat? Drop your answer below. Choose your side, because the bill is already in the mail.